people still didn't understand labels. So you say you're vegetarian and they would make you fish or chicken
Yeah.
and then be upset if you said I don't eat that.
Yeah.
So because my husband and I at the time were very young, we ate at our parents' house a lot. It just became a thing where it was easier to go with the flow.
Yeah.
When I divorced from him and I got back in school and began to just get to know myself, I met Dr. Aris Latham.
Ah.
Yes, and Dr. Aris is definitely my mentor
Yeah.
and inspiration for becoming a raw foodist. Although, again, at the time, I was still eating the fish and chicken.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
And he has a lot of grace with that as well too.
he's learned.
I had yeah. I had an opportunity to go down to Panama
Yes,
and do some study with him and get certified in the Sunfire course. And so
absolutely.
he told me about some experiences with people who came down there who do not want to do raw, and he had some grace with them. And so I guess he's grown in this grace.
He has. Aris was really hardcore
I,
back in
I
the
can
day. We're talking
imagine.
about like 84,
Okay, gotcha.
85. You know, he was still establishing himself
Yeah.
as a leader in this arena. And really, the only other person that was his counterpart or contemporary was Dr. Kwatamani.
Okay.
And Ari said that at the time, although they started their journeys separately, they met in a health food store, started comparing notes, and began to work together.
Ah.
So Dr. Kwatamani created a community, and I think they're in Belize.
Okay.
And Aris has gone to Panama. And I would say that in my journey, I have found that it is much easier to be a raw foodist if you're in an environment that is conducive to that.
Okay,
So
gotcha.
certainly a tropical environment
Indeed.
is very difficult to be 100% raw in the city.
Mm.
And I just observed all ends of the spectrum. When I finally did move to Atlanta, it was to be with my second husband. And at that time, he was a Nazarite. So I took the vow of the Nazarite as well. So not only was I vegan, but I was a very strict vegan. We didn't eat fermented foods. We had no fruits of the vine. And back then, the commercial sweetener was white grape juice, just
Okay.
like they use high fructose corn syrup.
Yeah, yeah.
Then it was white grape juice.
Okay.
So there was very little that we could eat that was already processed and packaged. So we had to make so many things from scratch.
Gotcha.
And it was during those years that I was with him that I would attribute my developing the courage to be fearless with spices and combinations of things.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he was a lot of things. But keeping it on a high note, one of the things that I got from him and I appreciated was his cooking abilities
Yeah.
and his creativity
Yeah.
with foods. And he made it very easy to become vegan
Gotcha. Gotcha.
in a world that had no, very little processed food. There was tofu from the soy shop. Was it organic and vegan? They made it themselves.
Gotcha.
So I would say it was probably as organic as you could get,
Gotcha.
We made our own gluten,
Yeah.
From the wheat itself. And, one of the staples in our community was Soul Vegetarian,
Yep. I want to
and
talk about that
sure.
because for a lot of the new generation of our community and the young people who are now coming into the space of using food as medicine, using food to heal yourself, becoming vegan, going raw, etc. A lot of them think that this movement began in 2018 when What the Health came out. And so, but there was a revolution and a shifting around food and as a form of nonviolence in the 60s and the 70s as well too. And you had the emergence of people like Dick Gregory, Dr. Aris Latham that we talked about, Dr. Africa, Dr. Sebi, all of these people who were born out of that whole civil rights movement, but it was also this other movement of, using food as nonviolent by converting to a primarily vegetarian diet.
Right. And let's not forget the Honorable Elijah Muhammad with his How
Indeed.
to Eat to Live.
Yeah, how to eat to
Because
live.
he really, I would say he was the one that really started the movement.
Gotcha.
Although, if I'm going to really dig deep,
Yeah.
Ellen G. White,
Okay.
Seventh-day Adventist,
Yeah.
you know, she was a woman of mixed race,
Yeah.
and she received a vision that, you know, she was to follow scripture to the T
Yeah.
and be vegetarian.
Yeah.
And so those who really follow her teachings are truly vegetarian.
Okay.
And it was through their stores that we were able to get meat alternatives
Ah,
back
gotcha.
in the day. So that's why I bring them up.
Good.
Because,
Yeah.
you know, she started, I think, back in the 50s, 40s or 50s. And then there was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad.
Yeah. He was one of the first books that I read, and then Dick Gregory's books.
How to Eat to Live.
Eat to live.
Yes,
Yeah.
when I first became conscious of what it was to be vegetarian
Yeah.
before I went back to eating fish and chicken.
Yeah.
I gotten pregnant by my later husband, and my family disowned me because I didn't want to abort.
Yeah.
And I just really began to delve into what it was to be natural. So the three books that I lived by was one, Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss.
Yeah.
Two,
Thick book.
yes, and Dick Gregory, Cooking with Mother Nature.
Yep.
And three, Survival into the 21st Century by
Those are
Victorous. His name gives me.
It always escaped me. It's that
Clo-
pink book with the
Peter Max did the art on the cover of it.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
It looks like a hippie book.
yeah.
It is a hippie book. But those three books were the books that I lived by in my early days. And through turmoil, I did eventually end up leaving my first marriage because of one, the infidelity, but two, because of just our life paths were going in different
Yeah.
directions.
Yeah.
And I think that contributed to the infidelity because we just had different interests.
Yeah, and I think that happens a lot. You know, when you transition your lifestyle, your consciousness shifts.
Absolutely.
And if you weren't aligned with your partner beforehand, it's going to go separate ways.
Absolutely.
Because food doesn't just shift how your body looks from the outside and the inside, but it shifts everything.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's so true. And so it really was a journey in that sense because in then being on my own, meeting Dr. Latham, the journey of becoming vegan eventually.
Yeah.
And at the time, vegan wasn't even a word.
Nope.
Still, it was vegetarian.
It was very
You know, meaning you eat vegetables.
Yeah.
I remember one young woman telling me once that, they were considering fish to be a vegetable. I said, how? It's like people try to just twist things around to suit themselves. And I'm like, accept it for what it is and where
Yeah.
you are.
Yeah.
It's no judgment.
Yeah.
So I was really happy in my second marriage initially because I had the opportunity to be in spiritual community
Okay.
and to live the lifestyle of a spiritual renunciate that was rooted in spiritual consciousness.
Gotcha.
Now, later on, I found out that it was a cult.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is a whole nother conversation.
Indeed.
But I got many, many jewels, so even though there was the negative side,
Yeah.
there were so many jewels that helped to form my life and shape my life in a way that I will always be grateful for,
Yeah.
and
And a lot of times when you go left, it's just confirming that you were supposed to go right.
there
So
you
it's,
go.
a lot of times it's there for confirmation as well.
Absolutely. But if you don't know what that is, there's a part of us that I learned because I was so brazen. I was like, I don't see how women can be abused in a relationship. I don't see how anyone would ever be in a cult. And yet I found myself in both of those situations. And it's typically the brazen attitude which allows us to be caught off guard
Mm,
because it's a systematic breaking down of the spirit. It's
gotcha.
a systematic uh, deprogramming, if you will,
Yeah.
and then brainwashing.
Yeah.
So I was on a path of righteousness and truth. And so when the spiritual leader began to interject the lies,
Yeah.
I and so many others were so wrapped up, we began to justify the lies for him.
Gotcha. And that
He,
happens a
he,
lot.
he didn't have to, because he had fed us so much truth. But fortunately, and like I said, that's another conversation. I got out of that and continued with the lifestyle.